Now, if you've been watching the ITV coverage, you might recognise this view behind me. I'm down in Dumbo with that glorious Manhattan skyline behind me. I'm not in the ITV studios. I'm not on the Soho House rooftop just up there. Not allowed to film with my camera. But I am on the top of the Empire Stores warehouse building down in Dumbo, which is one of the best parts of all of New York, really. So this feels like a good moment just to take pause. Well, not because the journey's over or far from it. I think there's still going to be plenty of matches to come, plenty of flights, probably plenty of tacos as I head to Mexico. And if all goes to plan, hopefully another 22 nations of fans still to find. But somewhere between New York and Miami, between Canada and the West Coast, between kickoffs and full times, haven't really taken a huge amount of time just to stop and think about the whole journey and how much I'm enjoying it and my reflections on it so far. And when I left Heathrow a few weeks ago, I had a route planned across North America, 5 World Cup tickets, this little microphone, and what felt like a slightly ridiculous ambition to try and meet at least one fan from the 48 competing countries here at the World Cup. Now, as I record this, I've met fans from 26 countries. I've travelled New York, Miami, Toronto, Newfoundland, Edmonton, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, back to Miami, and now back to New York. Slept in quite a few hotels, on trains, and some friends' sofas. And I've become strangely familiar with American airport terminals. I spent far too much money on stadium food, and I've eaten an entirely unreasonable number of tacos, although there's no complaints about that. And it's also become really clear, if you ever invent a sport based around queuing for shuttle buses, I'm world class. So if you've been listening from the start, you'll know the route. You'll know the places I've been. You'll know the matches that I've covered already. So instead, I thought I'd take a little breath and share a few of the moments that have stayed with me and a few of the things that have interested me most, surprised me, and perhaps a little bit where my head's at going into this second phase of this adventure. I guess one thing that struck me almost immediately is how little of this podcast has actually happened when I've expected it to. When I was planning Fan 48, I sort of imagined spending hours arranging interviews with people and supporters, sitting down over coffees, carefully sort of ticking off countries one by one off a spreadsheet. And I have made a spreadsheet. It's quite a beautiful spreadsheet, although I did mess up the top 8 finishes, but that's another whole story. But there's been a lot of that, but not much. Instead, almost everything memorable has happened slightly by accident. It's happened because someone has been standing next to me. I've sat down often to edit a podcast in New York or a hotel bar and heard a Yorkshire accent behind me. I pursued a German man to a German beer garden looking for football fans and ended up talking about immigration, history, and a man called Sheffield. I've gone looking for Australian supporters and somehow managed to find a professional slap fighter. I've watched a Brazilian trying to learn the bagpipes from a Scotsman in a stadium concourse, and absolutely none of that was in the plan. And of course, I'm now realizing that that's probably the point and probably much better. I mean, the football has definitely been the excuse. You see a football shirt, a scarf, you hear a chant. And then, of course, somehow that gives me permission to start a conversation with someone that I would otherwise have just walked straight past. And when I reflect back, I definitely remember cities, what's attracted me and how I felt about being in there. But I guess most of all, I'm remembering some of the people. Seattle makes me think of Danny and the Australians. San Francisco makes me think of Japanese American gentlemen explaining Angel Island and the German beer garden. Miami is definitely South Beach, samba bagpipes, colourful shirts and Colombian football shirts everywhere. New York is, of course, the skyscrapers and the vibe of Times Square's a Manhattan, but it's definitely DJ Black. It's Matt from York and his BMXing son. It's Ecuadorian fans celebrating a goal in a sports bar. The people have definitely become the places. And I think before I came, if you'd have asked me what success looks like, it would have been, am I on schedule to meet the fans from the 48 countries? And I'm definitely still thinking about that. And I absolutely do want to try and tick that off. I might struggle with Jordan and Uzbekistan now they're out of the tournament, but I'm going to keep trying. But almost everybody I've met so far, I haven't planned to, and it's just someone who's popped up, and it's been a little moment of coincidence and turned into something really interesting and fascinating. So while I'm definitely counting countries, I think what I'm really looking for is to go a little bit deeper in some of the conversations I've had. Sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. And that's totally fine. But I'm certainly seeking to try and just understand people a little bit more and do some of the deeper questions I was thinking about. And I'm going to try and play in this week some of the conversation I had with my mate Tim, who's an anthropologist, before I came out here, with some of the ambition, just to check in and see how I might be able to re-engage and what kind of questions might trigger those. I mean, it's always dependent on the moment, really, and where you meet them. And I think that's been quite critical along the way. I definitely keep thinking about Vladimir, the taxi driver, before I came out, and his reference to Greek salads. And that's definitely been my experience. The commonality of I'm experiencing with people is really, really interesting. I love my conversation with Matt from York, whose son is representing Great Britain at BMX, because that's a great example of how a conversation obviously starts with a point of contact around York and England, but then it really becomes about parenting and how you enable your children to just go off and live their dreams. And as a parent, you become those enablers. DJ Black in New York, you know, again, drawn to him because of the Panamanian shirt he was wearing, but then, you know, literally spending 10 minutes looking at photos on each other's phones, trying to communicate in Spanish, which I have none. He had very little English, but yet still having a laugh and forming a relationship was really, really great. They're all just tiny little moments. I mean, none of them are going to make any sports pages. And it's interesting. There's a lot of people out here roaming around with microphones and doing their little microphone conversations with people, just trying to find connection, boost their social media ratings. I mean, I'm certainly not doing that. But thanks for the follows if you have done. It's been really nice, actually. So now I guess it's really about trying to maybe go back to some of the people I've met along the way, or find new people in different circumstances to try and have a little bit of a deeper chat. I wonder if the nature of the tournament becoming more competitive as the competition becomes slightly smaller, but what's at stake becomes bigger, whether I'll get a different kind of fan, a different kind of focus on the game, a different kind of relationship around the game. And so I'm interested to see if I'll find that out. Now, heading to Mexico, I mean, that's just going to bring a whole different culture, a different relationship to it. I'm definitely aware of how the American relationship to the tournament has been, certainly in the big host cities. I've talked about that before, but I'm so excited to get to Mexico City and feel how that's going to work out. Again, it'll be interesting because, of course, unless you're playing in Mexico City, as England will be, hopefully, if they get past DR Congo, then will I find international fans congregating in Mexico City? I mean, why not? I found them in Miami, I found them in New York, but is Mexico the same kind of cosmopolitan city that I've experienced in some of the American ones? And does every bar have screens up? How will I engage with people? I'm also very mindful I want to take a little bit of time out and really enjoy that city. I've been once before and thought it was so fantastic. I really want to get out and have a bit more of a Mexican cultural experience. And then, of course, comes the Azteca Stadium. Wow, I mean, that's such an iconic place in world football, and all being well, that'll be an England-Mexico encounter, and to be part of that, now with my mate Chike, who's going to come down and join me at that, it's going to be unreal. Then, of course, you know, like, am I going to turn into a true England fan? Because going back into that and seeing England in competition, and who knows whether they'll progress or not, you know, it's going to be tough for all the big nations. It's such a competitive standard, I think, that will it become about me, the fan, and become really invested? And how will that inform whether I want to go to that final or not, whether England are appearing or otherwise, or do I try and sell the ticket and fund the entire trip? I don't know. My experience at MetLife really made me take pause on that, because I really didn't like the stadium massively. It didn't really, relative to what I've seen in other stadiums, it doesn't feel like the best option for the final. I understand why it is there, of course, but I hope they step up their game and try and make it more of a festival around there. Maybe it was the rain, but I don't know. I do feel like there's something about the architecture and the fan park and the lack of thought that's gone into the experience around the stadium for the fans. It just feels like any other game taking place there. That was my experience. Maybe they'll up their game. I don't know if they've had feedback about that. So here I am in New York, last 24 hours here. I'm going to go in search of some Norwegian fans. Can I find the Norway row? The French are in town. Of course, the Swedes are in town. So that'd be great to actually be in a city watching some of the fans who are heading off to the MetLife and see where they congregate back in New York like we did post-game, and whether they'll be as exhausted as I am. So I'm on track, I'm on schedule, but that's not really the point. I'm really hoping just to try and have some more connections, more experiences, and see what the next few weeks will bring. Thanks for joining the journey if you still are. If you're new to it, go back, look at some of the episodes, give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at Fan48Pod. If you've been listening and want to see some of the footage that I've been referring to, there's more video episodes on YouTube as well. So there's loads of ways to access it. And reach out. Do drop me a message. It's great to hear your thoughts. And if you're still traveling to these later stages or have been inspired to come out, let me know where you're going to be and let's see if we can enjoy a beer or indeed another taco. All right, last day in New York, then off to Mexico. See you soon.